Today's objective, we're going to be writing two-step equations. In two-step equations, you have two different operations. You're going to have either multiplication or division, as well as either addition or subtraction. So that's why it's called a two-step equation. Think number one, underline and circle keywords. You can use a highlighter, you can underline it, circle it, whatever, but you want to point out those keywords. Think number two, is means equals. Anytime you see the word is, you know that tells us to use an equals sign. Example one, we're going to write an equation and solve for all of our examples. 3 less than the product of a number and 4 is 11. Let's look at our keywords. Less than tells us to subtract. Product tells us to multiply. We don't know what our number is, so we're going to use a variable. We can use the letter A. And 4 is 11. Is tells us to use an equal sign. Let's get started. How do we write the product of a number and 4? Let's write that as 4A. Remember, when two things are beside each other, that implies multiplication. 3 less than. We're going to take 3 away, so we need to subtract 3. Remember, with less than, it goes behind your variable. Is equals 11. So 3 less than the product of a number and 4 is 11. This is a two-step equation, so let's solve. Add 3 to both sides. Your 3's cancel. You're left with 4A equals 11 plus 3 is 14. Divide by 4. Your 4's cancel. You're left with A equals 14 over 4, which you know can reduce to 7 over 2, which you can also write as a mixed number. 2 goes into 7 3 times with 1 left over. So A equals 3 1/2. So the product of a number and 4 is 11 if you take 3 away. So 4 times 3 1/2 minus 3 should give you 11. And it does. Example number 2. 6 more than the quotient of a number and 10 is 13. Let's look at those keywords. More than tells us to add. Quotient tells us to divide. For a number, we're going to use a variable. Let's use B this time. And 10 is 13. Is tells us equals. So let's write our equation. 6 more than. That means we are adding 6. The quotient of a number and 10. That's division, so the quotient of a number. We don't know that number, so I'm sorry. We're going to use B. And 10. So the quotient of a number and 10. More than 6 is 13. This is a two-step equation, so let's solve. Subtract 6 from both sides. You're left with B over 10 equals 13 minus 6 is 7. Multiply by 10 on both sides. You're left with B equals 70. Let's check ourselves. 70 divided by 10 is 7, and 7 plus 6 does give us 13. We are correct. Example number 3. The sum of 8 and the quotient of a number and 5 is 9. Let's look at those keywords. Sum tells us to add. Quotient tells us to divide. A number, we don't know what that number is, so let's use the variable C. And 5 is 9. Is tells us to use an equal sign. Let's write it. The sum, we're going to use addition. 8 and the quotient of a number. So quotient of a number and 5. That is division, so we write that as C over 5. The quotient of a number and 5 and 8 is 9. Again, we are adding the quotient of a number and 5 and 8. That is what we're adding, finding the sum of. Equals 9. Let's solve this two-step equation. Subtract 8 from both sides. You're left with C over 5 equals 9 minus 8 is 1. multiply by 5 on both sides, you get C equals 5. Let's check ourselves. 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 1 plus 8 does give us 9. We are correct. Example 4, our last example. The difference of the product of a number and 12 and 20 is 28. Let's look at our keywords. Difference tells us to subtract. Product tells us to multiply. We don't know what our number is, so let's use D. Is tells us to use an equal sign. So let's look at these keywords. The difference, use a subtraction sign, of the product of a number and 12. How do we write the product of D and 12? That would be 12D. So the difference of this and 20, so do minus 20, equals 28. Let's solve this two-step equation. Add 20 to both sides. Your 20s cancel. You're left with 12D equals 28 plus 20 is 48. Divide by 12. Your 12s cancel. You're left with D equals 4. Let's check ourselves. 12 times 4 is 48, and 48 minus 20 does give us 28. That is how we write two-step equations.